When Joel Osteen addressed his followers with somber news, it marked more than just another difficult moment. It symbolized a growing tension between his carefully crafted message of hope and the increasing scrutiny surrounding his ministry. For decades, Osteen has preached optimism, abundance, and the promise of a better tomorrow, encouraging millions to believe that faith leads to flourishing. Yet as Lakewood Church expanded into a global brand, critics began questioning whether the uplifting message matched the actions behind the scenes. From disaster response controversies to financial transparency concerns, many felt that the image of compassion no longer aligned neatly with reality. What once appeared unshakable now seemed fragile, as doubts surfaced about leadership, priorities, and the future of one of America's most recognizable religious figures. A childhood shaped by faith and expectation. Joel Osteen was born on March 5, 1963 in Houston, Texas, into a family where faith was not just practiced, but lived publicly. As one of 6 children, he grew up in a household deeply shaped by his parents' spiritual mission. His father, John Osteen, had broken away from traditional Baptist structures in 1959 to form what would become Lakewood Church, driven by a belief in healing, miracles, and a more charismatic expression of Christianity. Joel's mother, Dodie, stood beside her husband through every struggle, modeling resilience and unwavering belief. The family's faith was tested early when Joel's sister Lisa was born with significant health challenges, an experience that pushed John and Dodie deeper into their convictions and helped define the direction of the church Joel would later inherit. The humble beginnings of Lakewood Church. Lakewood Church began not in grandeur but in simplicity. On Mother's Day in May 1959, John and Dodie Osteen opened the doors of a modest church housed inside a converted feed store in northeast Houston. With just over 200 seats, it was never intended to become a megachurch, but rather a place where people believed God still intervened in everyday life. Over time, the church shed its Baptist label and embraced a broader, more inclusive identity centered on healing and encouragement. By the late 1970s, attendance had grown to thousands, transforming Lakewood into a movement rather than just a congregation. Joel watched this growth quietly, absorbing lessons long before he ever stepped into leadership. The quiet son who preferred the camera. Unlike his charismatic father, Joel Osteen was reserved, shy, and deeply uncomfortable with public speaking. After graduating from high school in 1981, he briefly attended Oral Roberts University to study communications but left early, drawn instead to practical work. At just 19 years old, he returned to Houston with a vision that would prove transformative, bringing Lakewood Church into the television age. Joel launched the church's broadcast ministry from scratch, learning filming, editing, and production on the job. For nearly 2 decades, he worked behind the scenes, shaping the church's public image with polish and precision, convinced that faith could be communicated as powerfully through screens as from pulpits. Lessons learned. Outside the pulpit. While Joel never attended seminary or trained formally in theology, his education came through observation. He edited hundreds of his father's sermons, learning what resonated with audiences and what didn't. At home, faith wasn't theoretical, it was lived. When Dodie Osteen survived a terminal cancer diagnosis in the early 1980s, the experience reinforced the family's belief in prayer and positivity. These moments shaped Joel's worldview, grounding him in the conviction that words matter and belief shapes outcomes. Though he insisted repeatedly that preaching was not his calling, life was quietly preparing him for a role he never sought. An unexpected calling and sudden loss. In January 1999, after years of declining his father's requests, Joel finally agreed to deliver a sermon. Nervous and unpolished, he spoke simply, sharing stories and humor in an effort to connect. 6 days later, John Osteen died suddenly from a heart attack. The loss shocked the church and left Lakewood without a clear successor. Despite his lack of experience and reluctance, Joel stepped forward during a period of grief and uncertainty. On June 7, 1999, he was officially installed as senior pastor, inheriting not only a large congregation but also immense expectations, explosive growth, and a new vision. Under Joel's leadership, Lakewood Church experienced unprecedented growth. Attendance quickly multiplied, fueled by expanded television reach and a message that emphasized hope over condemnation. Joel doubled spending on broadcast airtime, secured better time slots, and leaned fully into media strategy. His sermons were designed to be accessible, uplifting, and broadly appealing, resonating with people far beyond traditional church audiences. Within 5 years, weekly attendance had surged into the tens of thousands, turning Lakewood into the largest church in the United States and Joel into a household name, transforming an arena into a sanctuary. As crowds outgrew Lakewood's original sanctuary, Joel pursued an audacious plan, relocating the church to Houston's former basketball arena, the Compaq Center. In 2003, Lakewood signed a long-term lease and committed to a massive renovation project costing tens of millions of dollars. The transformation turned a sports venue into a state-of-the-art worship center, complete with classrooms, media facilities, and sweeping architectural features. When the doors opened in 2005, every seat was filled, symbolizing Lakewood's arrival as a global religious powerhouse. A message that redefined modern ministry. Joel Osteen's sermons marked a departure from traditional preaching. He rarely spoke about sin, judgment, or repentance, choosing instead to focus on encouragement, gratitude, and self-belief. His message resonated with millions seeking comfort and motivation, even those with no religious background. Critics, however, questioned whether this approach diluted core Christian teachings. Still, Joel's influence grew as his words crossed borders through television, books, and digital platforms, redefining what a modern pastor could look like in the media age. Building a brand beyond the church. The release of Your Best Life, now in 2004, catapulted Joel into global fame. The book's success was staggering, remaining on bestseller lists for years and selling millions of copies worldwide. Joel soon became a sought-after speaker, filling arenas and commanding high appearance fees. Though he stopped drawing a salary from Lakewood, his personal wealth grew through publishing, events, and merchandise. Lakewood was no longer just a church, it was a brand with international reach, financial transparency, and public concern. As Lakewood's revenue increased, so did questions about how funds were allocated. Financial reports showed that a significant portion of the church's budget went toward operations, media, and events, while a relatively small percentage supported direct charitable outreach. For some supporters, the scale of media impact justified the spending. For critics, the imbalance raised concerns about priorities and accountability, fueling ongoing debate about the role of megachurches in addressing social needs. The prosperity message and its critics. At the heart of Joel Osteen's ministry lies a belief often associated with prosperity teaching, the idea that faith, positivity, and spoken words can lead to success and abundance. Supporters find hope in this message, while critics argue it oversimplifies suffering and risks blaming individuals for circumstances beyond their control. The debate has followed Joel throughout his career, drawing sharp lines between encouragement and theology, optimism and tradition, moments that shook public trust. Over the years, several high-profile controversies challenged Lakewood's image, including responses to natural disasters and financial decisions that drew public backlash. While the church has taken steps to address criticism, these moments left lasting impressions and raised difficult questions about leadership during crises. Even when corrective actions were taken, trust once lost proved difficult to fully restore. Security, safety, and responsibility. Concerns about safety at large places of worship came into focus following a tragic incident at Lakewood in 2024. While details were handled by authorities, the event sparked national conversation about security, mental health, and the balance between openness and protection in faith spaces. Joel's response emphasized unity in faith, but critics called for deeper structural accountability and reform. Loss, reflection, and an uncertain future. In 2025, Joel shared the passing of his mother, Joel Osteen, a foundational figure in Lakewood's history. Her death marked the end of an era and prompted reflection within the church community. As attendance patterns shift and public questions grow louder, Lakewood faces a changing landscape. Joel Osteen remains influential, but the future of his ministry now rests on how it reconciles its message of hope with calls for transparency, compassion, and trust in a world increasingly skeptical of institutions built on spectacle.